Welcome to another episode of the Architecture of Health. I'm Deb Voisin, and this week my guest is returning, Dr. Q, MoveMedUK. Welcome back, Dr. Q.
Awesome, Dr. V. We'll have to call you Dr. V.
Hey, I don't mind being called something B, although, yeah, you actually are a doctor. You are a doctor of chiropractic, and you've written a book called "Movement: Why Movement is Medicine." And I'm just so glad that you're here today because I wanted to go a little deeper. Your posts on Instagram and in your, I saw them also on YouTube, and you say they're on Facebook. You go through these very specific ways of moving, and then you almost always say, this isn't exercise, this is neurology. So I thought for your fans and for myself, we could dig a little bit deeper into this. And guys, this is one of the only stories I'll tell. I was shocked when I learned that humans have brains because we move, that there are animals, there's like some kind of sea life that has a brain while it's looking around for where to plant itself. And once it's permanently planted, it eats its own brain. So that was about as far as I went to realize, wow, humans, neurology, movement, very, very embedded. But I also want to hear therapeutically, like what this rich perspective that Dr. Q has, because he's turned it into actionable steps. So let's start with just this high level idea. Why do you say so often movement is neurology when you post?
Brilliant. So yeah, like you said earlier, movement is pretty much the final common pathway of a thought. So if you think something in your head, like it becomes action through movement. So you could call that the top-down processing from the brain to the body. So that's top down. Conscious thought eventually becomes a movement of some kind, whether it's a breath, a heartbeat, or a physical movement. Um, and then you also get bottom up. So that's where movement doing exercise can teach the brain something else. And they meet in the brain in a special small circuit called the insular ACC insular AC prefrontal cortex. So that's like a little loop there. So if you can imagine, I deal with patients who have got chronic pain, and very often chronic pain is associated with a fear of movement. People have become scared to move because of a certain pain. But now that is a real prediction. The brain is trying to protect itself. It's trying to, yeah. So pain is about protection. So from the top down, there might be a fear of movement, and from the bottom up, we need to teach the brain a different prediction error. So we need to introduce pain-free movement, which will then cause this dilemma in the brain where it's like the brain knows it's painful, but all of a sudden there's a non-painful movement coming in, and that prediction has to be updated in the brain. So yeah, everything is neurology from top down to bottom up. All movement is neurology. So yeah, my captions are purely facetious sometimes. We just try and say something a bit funny, just to catch people's attention. That was where all the ideas of the movements came from. Is basically, if I just posted all the good basic stuff, no one would ever care because people want to see something cool. So we use layer 6 of this protocol to introduce novel pain-free movements, and we can get creative with them. Some of them are complete jokes where I've taken a dance move and we've tried to put the neuroscience behind why a floss is good for you. But some of them are legit therapeutic exercises, but they all can be justified as being a pain-free movement experience for the brain. And with people who experience chronic pain, these little glimpses of hope of pain-free movement is essential. It is absolutely essential. It just gives someone a real belief that they can actually get out of their chronic pain. So yeah, that's in a nutshell, a rather large nutshell, but that's basically how I like kind of view it. And I started posting these quirky new movement experiences in March this year, and it's been a journey I've committed to every day for this year, and this year is almost coming to an end. So yeah, we'll see how it transitions next year. But yeah, it's been really fruitful with how it's grown. Feel very grateful and very grateful for every comment because it's honestly so humbling when you get a message. I get them every day. People say, "Wow, my chronic pain of X amount of years has gone away after trying some of your movement snacks." And to me, that makes sense. I see this every day in clinic. You know, you introduce pain-free movement, you give people hope, and often some chronic pain goes away. Um, so my goal of getting into this profession was helping people, and now to have a little bit of a bigger platform to help people is amazing. And yeah, hopefully the community just continues to grow, and we can just give people more and more hope that there is pain-free movement out there.
I love everything you're saying. First of all, you have to have hope and an idea that you can be different. Next, that you're offering it in snack sizes, not some overwhelming amount of change that someone needs to integrate into their life. And once you open that, you crack open that door of pain free movement a little bit, and the light starts streaming in, all sorts of other things can open up. I do have some questions about, you say novel. Sometimes you're posting for novelty because the brain is already hardwired to expect certain things. And novelty seems like one of the ingredients you're talking about. The other is I know sometimes I've fallen into the idea like, oh, this set of things is pain free and this other set of things is not. So, and then that can become limiting in itself. Do you want to talk about what it takes to experience pain free movement, like any big patterns?
Yeah, that is the golden question. Hey, I think let me answer the first question first about novelty. So, in how we educate, so layer two is essentially education. So, we educate patients a lot, and we have different systems of education. We educate about the four pillars of movement. And then there's like for ease of simplicity, we educate about the five pillars of a healthy brain. And the five pillars can be summarized as the acronym LENDS, lens. These things lens to you, bad English, but L is love. So that's a podcast for a different day. Love, relationships, reasons to get better, etc. E is exercise. So four pillars of that we can go over if we have time. I'll leave out N for last. D is diet. So obviously what you do and don't put into your mouth and the timing of it. And S is sleep. So I think those four are pretty much accepted these days. Everyone knows about those. But yeah, in my field of chronic pain management and movement longevity, the novel and newness is essential to a healthy brain. And yeah, this was first found out by Marianne Diamond. She's sort of the queen or the mother of plasticity. She did the original research that showed that a nourished brain will physically grow in size. And then that kind of morphed into the godfather of plasticity, who's Michael Merzenich. And he did pretty much most of the sort of clinical data as to what protocols you need to do to target plasticity in the brain. And newness is the common denominator between those two goats of our field. And yeah, so the novelty is just an essential part of it. So yeah, so that's the novelty part of it. What was the second question?
It was along the lines of where novelty. I've had cases where I was doing something for just for the sake of novelty, where as a hypermobile person, I started to go, oh, not every novel thing is in my wheelhouse of pain-free, enduring longevity movement. And so that then can make me stuck thinking there's some limited way to be safe, whereas I still need novelty.
Yeah, so we can speak about the hypermobility later, and where I think perhaps too much novelty isn't a good thing. I suppose too much of anything isn't good, right? So So if you're training only novelty in exercise, you'll just, yeah, like you almost your brain won't learn anything specific. Like you have to build capacity in strength, in mobility where you might not be mobile, but also you need to build stability where you may be too mobile. So yeah, I think the answer to that question is that people are complicated. Um, there really is no one shoe or one size fits all, unfortunately. I wish there was. I often joke with patients that if there was a one fix for anything, I'd be so rich. I would get people to mortgage the treatment because it's a one session, because people would also pay it, right? Like if like you knew that there was a one fix for anything, like there is no price to that. So yeah, people are complicated. Everyone, you meet people in different phases of life, different fears, but it's a spectrum, and yeah, every person gets individual information, individual recommendations. So the amount of times my wife has heard me dictating replies on Instagram, excuse me, where I dictate and I say, um, sorry, but I cannot give you formal recommendations without assessing you myself. I have to say assessing slowly because it always types it differently. But yeah, literally, people ask lots of specific questions, and I'm just offering educational hope on social media at the moment. You know, hope that there is different options out there. People who might be stuck in this chronic pain loop. I'm offering education and hope at the moment. But when people ask specific questions, yeah, legally, ethically, I can't give advice because I might give you some generic advice for a generic condition, but it might make you worse because you might have something else underlying that might be triggered by the advice. So yeah, people are complicated.
People are complicated. And so you talked about lens, love, exercise, novelty, D. What was D?
Diet.
Diet and sleep. So you're creating this environment, a holistic environment for the well being that your whole nervous system needs to chill out. And it sounds like all these novel and smart. I mean, let's talk about novelty and through the lens of what you post to create hope. There's a novelty, but there's also a certain amount of restraint that you're using as you're inventing those. You've got a block, so you've got just like an inch shift in the hips. You've got your eyes doing something. You're not doing completely freestyle, wild movement. Is there anything you want to say about how you've curated the uh, the specific movements that you feature that you're posting every day this year?
Yeah, so I have to always sometimes remind people like I haven't done a PhD in any of these things, you know. I'm just using my master's brain to put together the research and logically just explain these things to the average person. To me, it just makes so much sense. Like you can just almost see the matrix in your head, whatever. But like it just makes so much common sense to me about all of these principles. But then you have to educate it to the average person who does not know about health or science. So yeah, it's always quite fun. Um, but yeah, sometimes like I've seen this in the clinic, is that the smallest of novel inputs to the brain, the smallest of novelty can make the biggest difference. So you don't have to do, like you said, like the full slinky, you know, you can just, the smallest of changes. So for instance, like one example, we've made a few things, we haven't trademarked them obviously, but some of like the big movements that I think are now synonymous with our page is the penguin pelvis. So just performing a hip hike action where you're raising your hips, keeping your knees straight, but you're doing this for like an extended period of time, you're building up an endurance stimulus in the pelvis. So one example of why that's amazing for people is that our pelvis is fatigue. If we sit too much, if we stand too much, certain muscles and sequences and patterns of the muscles start to fatigue. So we're introducing so like there, for instance, the novel experience might simply be an endurance stimulus in the same muscles. You could obviously add some weights to that, and then it becomes a strength stimulus. And then once someone gets So like once the like that movement, for instance, is not novel for someone anymore, then we can start adding in some eye movement or some neck isometrics or some nerve glides. So yeah, to me, the science is very straightforward and simple. And yeah, we just try educate one person, one post at a time.
I love it. So what you're doing is stacking layers of small bits of novelty with that are and the layers are based on how you know the inputs and outputs of our nervous system works. That is so smart. And by the way, penguin when I was teaching myself how to walk again after I was crawling to the bathroom and I hurt myself pretty badly, tore my labrum and everything. And I decided to use how I walk and run as the driving uh, decision making tool. Like if it makes me better at moving forward through space and these small movements of the pelvis and the shoulders and the spine and the feet, I was like, that's where I'm going to focus my attention. And so I would had this list penguin, pony, pulse to get myself to be able to move forward through space using my spine, the spinal engine. And that's what attracted me to your work as I saw that from purely the movement perspective, not even the neurology yet, is I saw that you were incorporating the small movements that really matter that when together add up to really healthy whole body experiences. Is there anything more you want to say about those before maybe we dig into those layers?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so there is a little bit of a master plan to this whole thing. The goal was this year just to build up this library, right? And like as you said earlier before the call, is you can scroll through the page now and there's, I mean, 350 plus demonstrations, right? So where do you start? But it isn't about starting with one and moving on to the next one. It's all individual. We're offering education. Once people know why they are doing something, 99% of the battle is won when someone knows why they are doing something. So it's not just Dr. Dr. Duck or Dr. Q on internet saying do this. People know why they are doing it, and then they can adapt it with their own practitioner. Because yeah, I can also only see people so many times in my lifetime. So yeah, that's why I'm trying to hopefully build up this courses in the future where you can have like-minded practitioners and you can find someone local to you in the States, in Australia, China, wherever, we can have a database of people who practice like-minded treatments and find someone local to you and just go on this movement journey. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And it's a cultural thing too. I had no idea how my body had forgotten penguin hip movement because it had been stuck to a chair. So being around people who are all investigating, creating this new culture, these new best practices, and this thoughtful curiosity. And honestly, I love that you're both a doctor and not a doctor. So humble. The why is what matters so that we can then be our own designers and find what really works for us. As you said, everything comes down to an individual basis, but there are these patterns that help us speed up that our design process. So let's look at those. You said it's called NRE. Do you want to explain that to the audience?
Yes, so NRE stands for Neural Re-education, and it's just the name of the protocol that I've done with patients since I've started being a chiropractor in clinic. So yeah, I fell into a clinic in my hometown in South Africa. I worked under a great chiropractor. I learned a lot from him, and it was a pain-based clinic, and we would see lots of patients who were in pain, but they like almost wouldn't come back for longer term type management, so they would always come back when they were in pain, which is fine, and we would always mostly help people, but then they were always coming back in pain. So I was like, well, something has to change, like we want to try and help people self-fulfill themselves. It's like an inception loop. They must be able to help themselves, and then obviously as a business, you still want to see people because you still have to make a like living, but the mindset for the patient must change from I need to see Cuan to I want to see him because it's a performance enhancement session. So we try to get patients from the mindset. Most people you meet when they're in a bit of dependence and they might have a physical injury or a brain injury or whatever that they need help with. So yes, people come in initially with some dependency and they might need to see you. That's fine. But we want to see how quickly can we get the patient from needing to see you to wanting to see you. So yeah, that's important. So anyway, then that's kind of what got my deep dive and my direction going towards how can we do that. And then it went down this whole neural plasticity circuit. I read a book called Soft Wired. Came out about a decade ago, more than that. And then I was like, well, cool. Well, what do I want to bring to the table? So we called this protocol something NRE, neural reeducation. It just made sense to me. We have to reteach the brain so it's the assisted relearning of pain-free movement. So the assisted, I'm a chiropractor, we help people. So we assist people in relearning pain-free movement. So very simple. So that's as simple as it gets in a one line. But then I was like, well, you obviously can't monetize that too well. You can't teach that too well. It's just a one line, right? So then it became a three-line thing, a three-step process. And then I was like, well, Move is my brand, movement is medicine. So we were like, let's get Move in there. So the three layers of NRE is on the wall behind me. Remove. So physically, socially, remove the cause of what's causing an issue. So that makes a lot of sense logically. Let's remove what's causing something, otherwise it will keep on coming back. So once we've done that, the next layer is re-move. So remove, physically remove the body again. And that's where obviously hands-on manual therapy comes in. So many different types of practitioners, anyone can help a patient physically remove again. So that was layer 2 a decade ago. And then phase 3 was move forward. Very simple. Exercise therapy comes in, just move. Keep moving forward. And yeah, so that was the NRE protocol a decade ago. And I practiced that for about 5 years, and I found patients were getting out of this painful loop and into this self-sustaining loop and coming back for check-ins. My like diary would start being busy in 2, 3, 4 months time, as opposed to 1 week in advance. So I was like, that's pretty cool. So I was like, this is actually helping people want to come back. My net, I'm still seeing a patient on average the same amount of time potentially, but instead of seeing them 4 times, 6 times for an injury, we're seeing them 4 times, 6 times over a year. So it just made sense. And then that's how people can build up capacity. So in the future, they have niggles as opposed to major injuries in the future. So this is what we found statistically. And then I put the NRE protocol in my book, which is what you read. And yeah, and then now we have this access to deep diving learning models where we can really dive deep into, let's expand these layers. So I've been doing that over the last 3 years. And now we've got a 10 layer model. So they can obviously be like from the 3 layers, we can go into now 10. So there's 5 layers under remove, there's 2 under remove, and then there's 3 under move forward. So yeah, we can go through those very briefly if you want.
I want.
I want. Um, so yes, because yeah, like I think you see patients of, so we said earlier, people are complicated. So we see people with all different abilities, all different, just like even like how people think. Some people think logically, some people think mathematically, some people think abstract. So you have to have different ways to explain to some people. Some people don't want much education. Some people don't really care too much. They just want a fix. So for the people who want to do the deep dives, and some people need to do it, and some people want more education, that's where you can then go into the deep dive. But I found the 3 model is good for the average person. It makes logical sense. But then we went into the deep dive yeah, and like this is where it's just more of like a passion project, I suppose. Yeah, some people who like want to get into the weeds, I'm like, let's go.
And
So
and to say one reason I'm interested is that I've been looking at movement for 40 years from a cultural lens and then inside of different practices and managing lifestyle factors of sedentarism or even overmoving. And so I'm always curious what's under the hood that is unique or overlaps with other beliefs that I have, because I've found I had many false beliefs in the past about what was healthy or unhealthy. And for example, when you talk about remove as the first thing, that's the first thing I tell all my clients is let's get rid of whatever habit is draining your energy. That's one of the, and that lightens the load so that you have a little bit of willpower to start to investigate new things. So let's start there. What more can you say about how do you guide people towards what to remove without scaring them?
Correct. So a nice way for patients to understand this thing is that it's a seesaw. And yeah, so like it's not necessarily a perfect seesaw. It's more of like a spectrum line, right? And as you go up the spectrum, it could tilt in a way which means it's bad, whatever. But so half seesaw, half just a spectrum. And where people come in, they could largely be somewhere on the spectrum, and we want to get them further up the ladder, so to say. So yeah, the first step, the first layer is acceptance. Some people don't want to believe that they might need help or that they might be injured. So once someone is like, right, I need to do something about this, and they professionally try get help and they consciously walk into your room, that's step one. So people have pretty much done step one when they walk into my clinic anyway, because I mean, I haven't forced them to come see me. They've got themselves here. So they've already done that. So that's layer one. Then step two is education. So yeah, there's a really cool literature out there about a thing called PNE, which is pain neuroscience education. Uh, Dr. Lorimer Moseley, I think from Australia, is like the guru there. And yes, like that's its own thing where pain neuroscience education has been done in different trials, just the education versus treatment, and how it's almost as beneficial sometimes, just educating someone, not touching them. So this is what really opened up my eyes to like, oh my gosh, you can really physically help someone by speaking to them. I was like, wow. So yeah, so P&E is their version. Obviously, I mean, as I said, I'm not into inventing like anything, but as far as I know, there is no if pain neuroscience education is a thing, there's no longevity science education. Yeah, so we have to make an acronym for that. But yeah, so it's just education about how these things work, right? What pain is, how pain works, the complexity of pain. Pain isn't linked to tissue damage. Pain is always real. Pain needs an environment. So like these are big themes that often the average patient that I see doesn't know or has never thought about. So yeah, so a lot of education. So that's pretty much level two. Level three is we try and map, and that's pretty much the assessments, right? So we're assessing someone to see where has a normal sensation got lost in their spinal cord or their brain somewhere. Where has a movement that should be pain free? Why is it now causing pain? So that's obviously a whole host of orthopedic and neurological testings. Um, and yeah, we just try and find where someone might be dysfunctional and see where we can optimize their function. Try and remove some of the dysfunction or just increase better function somewhere else. And yeah, that is where it's very people are complicated. That's the theme of today's talk, I think. People are complicated. Because yeah, someone might come in with back pain and the issue is 100% in the head, the jaw, the foot, the bunion, whatever else. So yeah, we really do try to look at the holistic patient. A lot of my lower leg injury, sports injury patients, we don't touch their legs, for instance. Like there's no point in treating the hammy that keeps niggling if the pelvis isn't great and the neck isn't great and the posture. So yeah, so again, like this to me is very, very in my head, like obvious, duh. we have to do this, but it's not that common in practice, you know.
No, it's
Um,
really not that common. People
yeah,
think of the pain as there's tissue damage locally, and that's why a lot of these solutions the solutions don't, the deep solutions don't look like the symptoms at all.
correct. And again, people are complicated. Um, so too are practitioners. So yeah, there's just such a different. There's just lots of opinions out there, lots of noise. So remind me, we can speak about the noise out there. We can speak about that later. Um, so yeah, people need education to understand these things, and education takes time. And I think that's where sometimes the system fails people is yeah, like unfortunately you might see a practitioner and they might be time limited to only have 10 minutes with you. It takes me 20 minutes to educate someone about like one area of their body. So what can a practitioner do with 10 minutes in total, you know? So it sometimes is just easier for someone just to give a one answer, label something, and let them leave the room, and so you can see the next patient. And unfortunately, that is just the system, you know, like it's not, I mean, it's not wrong, right, whatever. It's just the system. So the system has bred this culture of labeling stuff, creating more anxiety, and almost putting things into boxes when a human is not a box. A human isn't a box. You have to look at this whole six-dimensional object, right? um, so yeah, so that's essentially level three. Level four is remove what's causing the injury. So there's the original remove is level four. Five is manual inputs. So that's treatment. You know, we have to physically sometimes treat people. You have to remove myofascial trigger points, remove physical restrictions, get joints physically removing that are restricted. Um, in your case, with the hypermobility, where you might be too mobile, that's where we get into the sort of rehab. It's exercise is way more important for the hypermobile people as opposed to treatment. Although, little asterisks there, everyone's complicated, everyone's different. Even I deal with people with EDS every day. And even though they might be globally hypermobile, they can still develop local areas of restriction, local areas of spasm where the brain is not is not comfortable moving a certain point, and it's now spasm that area. So sometimes treatment is also essential for the EDS patient. Um, then we start getting into the fun, you know. So level six is my social media at the moment is the new novel movement, motor control, you know, teaching the brain motor control and tricking the brain into experiencing these movements without pain. And eventually they're all fighting for the same real estate in the brain. So, so, so we mentioned about mapping earlier, like you might have a region of the brain, a rough region of the brain, which codes for a rough area of your body. It's called a homunculus. And let's say your homunculus for your lower back is just riddled with pain. You've had pain from rest, pain from bending, pain from flexion, pain from everything, pain from emotional traumas. And now your brain only knows lower back pain, and everything around your lower back is painful. So we start introducing these novel pain-free movement experiences that obviously all go through the lower back anyway. And now all of a sudden that homunculus has got no um, question, but it has to update. So now it starts getting all this bottom up input of pain free movement, and the brain has to make space for it. So it has to sell some of the painful real estate, and some of the new young guns, the new money comes in, and they buy some of the pain free real estate in the brain. And yeah, that whole process um, is stressful. Like it's a stressful process for the body, consciously, physically. It's stressful. It takes time, it takes effort, and I think it often comes out as frustration. You know, people are like it's exhausting. Like doing good stuff is also exhausting. So again, this is just like from an educational point of view, telling patients that they have to go through some sewage to get to the clear water is so important. If someone knows that it's going to be a little bit of a rough ride, they expect that. Um, I think there's a problem when you tell a patient, I will fix everything, this is going to be amazing for you, because then there's an expectation. What happens when you have a flare up, which you inevitably will have? So, yeah, education is everything, as we said earlier.
So we were on number 6 about reintroducing, or introducing new novel movement. One small
Yes.
story about that. When I'd torn my hip again, this is a couple years ago, and I was limping into my improv theater class. I was like, guys, don't touch me. I am just barely alive. And then when all the playful movements started and I had zero pain at all, and what you're saying is that the real estate for the enjoyable in my brain crowded out those overriding that pain loop. Now, as you're saying though, I wasn't done. I had to go through a lot more sewage to get to the clear water, but that really explains that experience. So that was number 6. Are we ready for 7?
Yeah. So once the brain is like primed to learn something new, so like all this like novelty and all this like input to the brain's in this like vulnerable state where it's like about to learn something new, or it's going to go back to the old painful pattern. So it's in this vulnerable, wishy-washy state. That's when you need to continue. And layer 7 is graded exposure, where you incrementally start loading the good movement. So you can't just keep on going with novelty. You have to, let's say your original pain was with squatting, and now we've introduced a bit of a pain-free squat, a small, small, small pain-free squat. We then start increasing the range of motion, we increase the weight, we increase the speed, increase all the different metrics around movement. And so that's graded exposure where we just introduce more load and more capacity slowly, incrementally over time. Number 8. 8, we can call the 4 pillars of movement, which we mentioned earlier. So that's now where the graded exposure has got to a point now where you actually need to kind of just start doing some proper movement, some exercise. So that's where finding something that you enjoy, a hobby, and preferably outdoors. But the 4 pillars of movement we can summarize as strength, endurance, mobility, and proprioception. So yeah, those are kind of the big 4 pillars. When we see patients who, yeah, so for instance, I see lots of different types of people. Let's just take the average person who runs, right? They might be doing so much endurance. So their endurance pillar is amazing, but they might not be doing strength training, S&C. They might not be doing ankle proprioception and balance work. And most people 10 years ago were not doing any mobility. These days, I find everyone kind of knows all these things anyway. Like there's just so much information out there. So there's just so much information out there. But now it's like, well, obviously you have to do all of those. Um, and now it's just about finding time to do them all and how to do it and accountability, etc.
And with that, I also find time. I like to do things that I know are the best return on my effort. And what you're saying is make sure those 4 pillars are covered for one thing.
Correct. So, my personal story, we've got a little one. And yeah, like now I'm really battling to find the time to do a lot of exercise, but I'm still doing the basics. So I just look at my average week and it's just like, cool. I've done a little bit of strength here. Done a little bit of mobility there. I've done some endurance there. And then you just see where you can just top up and just add. So even when life is hectic, you can still just chip away, keep the stimulation going. Like you don't have to do an hour every day. You can do, I mean, 12, like whatever. You can do 1 minute a day. It's fine.
So those 4 pillars, great. That was number 8.
Yeah, and then number 9. Now, I mean, by now the patient's towards the top of this sort of ladder, right? The like seesaw's tilted way in our favor now. So even when someone now thinks about having a relapse, for instance, let's say they go tweak their back or they have a bout of flu and they get sick or whatever, like they have like a bit of a like relapse, they might only go backwards a few steps, essentially, right? But even going backwards a few steps isn't enough to tilt the seesaw way back to the old fear of movement pain. So the further up you go and the more you maintain, the harder it is to go back to square one again. This is the beauty of it. It's yeah. So level nine we could say is consolidation. And in keeping it simple, that's where you can follow or focus on the lens principles from earlier. See where in your life you can improve your love and your relationships and your gratitude practices. See where you can maintain or introduce new exercises, etc. The novelty can be now you can introduce a new skill, a new language. Like you don't have to keep on doing my silly movements on the internet. You can find something else to like keep your global brain healthy. Obviously diet. Where can you optimize your diet? Where does it need to be optimized or changed, etc. And then sleep. What can you do to help you sleep? So that's number nine. And then 10 is I always joke about this, but it's the movie Inception, with old Leo DiCaprio. It's this self-fulfilling loop where you're able just to actually sustain yourself completely. And when we get patients there, metaphorically, they still want to come in just to have a chat with me. We find whatever's building up some tension, find which joints are not moving great, and we just keep the patient optimized. So we can help a patient physically with some hands-on stuff, but I find a lot of how practitioners can help patients is accountability. Um, people get better for people most of the time. Um, so yeah, sometimes you might be the only person that a patient wants to get better for, and that's extremely deep and well, not sad, but it's a big burden on you as a practitioner. Sometimes you're the patient's only form of hope or friendship or anything like that. So but yeah, normally people have spouses, loved ones, parents, kids, friends, reasons to get better for. So yeah,
I love it. So there's that infinity symbol, or the kind of or the spiral as
yeah,
we
exactly.
continue. And what I love about this whole process you're describing is that someone starts to have a time or a and or money budget to be proactive, and it's kind of like doing maintenance on the car and not just waiting for the $4,000 repair. You're doing the so you've shifted your paradigm so that you have more sovereignty and are able to aim a little bit higher, and accountability. Yes, if we one reason I adopt practices from some professional sports trainers is they have to get people out of pain loops and back on the field faster, right? At the same time, what's missing in a private practice with the people I know that are not competitive athletes is sometimes we don't have a team, or we feel like we don't have a team. Those guys know I'll get back in the game. I'm doing this for my team. My coach is going to put me back in the game, and we have to put ourselves back into our game. And with all the isolation after COVID and everything, sometimes we don't really have a robust team. So I think this is
Correct.
very insightful. This whole process is very insightful. And it makes me want to make an improv game out of all 365 movements. Like we'll just have to hit a randomizer and then it'll hit one and everybody in the group has to do it.
Draw a ball out of a bingo. Bingo, there we go. Movement bingo.
Movement bingo.
Mingo.
Mingo. Movement ingo. I could see you. You're such a
Bingo.
clear, you're organizing this everything into these layers is very clear. And you said you wanted to come back to the word noise. I feel like that's one of the things you're doing is clearing out the noise. What else did you want to say about noise?
So at the moment, I'm actually creating more noise in a way. Yeah, like it just is more noise. So like some people ask like, well, where do I start? What do I do first? And so like that's where we want to transition from next year. We want to just do a lot more talking demonstrations. So maybe start off with the movement snack, but then just instead of having a description, I'll just talk. At the moment now, I spend lots of time doing the descriptions. but yeah, that's just with the life phase that we're in right now. But yeah, hopefully next year we'll be able to, yeah, just be more confident with putting my face and my voice out there. Um, yeah, hopefully the little one helps us do that. Um, but yeah, so noise is out there. Noise is just like obviously like for those listening, that like the noise is just lots of information out there. You can get information everywhere, and then you can see five different practitioners, and they'll all give you their own version of noise and their information and their opinions. So yeah, I'd like to just be a voice of simplicity out there, and hopefully bring out a whole series of longer form videos where it's like just my 2 cents, or like watch this before you see X, Y, Z. So this is what to look for. This is the red flags. If like someone's telling you to do X, Y, Z, question that. You know, you have power. Just remind people that you have an equal voice in the decision making. So if yeah, so like I just want to be almost for the people. You know, that's always been my business model is help people and they will refer more people to you. And yeah, God's blessed me in that way. I've just always just been the best version of advice and help that I can be. And yeah, the referrals keep coming back slowly. So yeah.
And I have to say, the noise factor, I can't tell you how both delightful and addictive it is to have way more information than any human being will ever be able to take in. I've had to At least I've had a reference point to compare it all to once I got introduced to pain-free movement used to be so much more common before we became these sedentary beings, and toddlers often express these pain-free patterns, and indigenous people often express these pain-free patterns. So at least I've had that as a filter that cuts out a whole bunch of noise. At the same time, then is deciding, how do you simplify enough to take action, and honestly too, then measurement, so that there have been times I committed all the way to take action, a quote healthy movement for whom, right? Quote healthy movement for whom, where I until I learned to measure with especially my hypermobility, I realized some of the things I was doing that I thought were healthy were actually reversing my pain-free movement cycles. And that kind of goes back to that question: a human is not a box.
Yeah, correct. So I'm taking a sabbatical in February, 4 weeks, where hopefully a lot of where this should be going will come to me. At the moment, we offer online and in-person consultations, and I way prefer the in-person stuff, because you can physically assess someone and give them advice. You know, online you can visually assess them and give advice, but yeah, it's just different. So yeah, like for instance, yesterday I had a online consultation, and this whole like notion of noise. I mean, this patient knew so much, like good stuff, by the way. You know, like the joke 10 years ago was, oh, it's a Google patient, you know, they've Googled their symptoms. Now you're getting patients who are almost experts, okay? They come in and they know a lot, which is great. Like I love patients who have taken the time to do deep dives into their body. But then you show them a picture on the wall. There's a picture on my wall to my left of me where it's a cross section of the spine, and you get the QL and the psoas muscle. And they're all like, yeah, I've Googled that one. I've Googled that one. I've GPT'd that one. And I'm like, great, but did you know that it's there? And you can show people where it is. And they're like, oh, no, I don't know that. And then it's like, cool. So you know that when you're sitting badly, that psoas muscle is consistently short and tight. And it's like, oh, no, I didn't think about that. So you can have like these experts who know so much about a topic, but then the raw basics are missing. So yeah, that's what I think my calling is. Hopefully, we'll bring out a whole never-ending videos on just getting people back to basics. So people do the deep dives, learn as much as you can. It's amazing, and then hopefully we can just tweak that into also knowing the basics.
And that education piece the digital format. I do like being able to point out movement things digitally. I can put something in slow motion. I can gather images from many different places. But as you're saying, it's the action, it's the implementation, it's the behavior change, and it's the use of our willpower really wisely. Sometimes our cups get so full thinking we know that it could be that feeling that we know that could be blocking our ability to change.
Yeah. I think in the engineering world, they call it the signal to noise ratio, you know. You want to get the signal to the noise even, directly proportional, you know. I think at the moment now, it's just like the noise signal ratio is just the signal's getting lost because there's just too much noise.
Well, I have to say, Dr. Q, I heard recently this saying simplicity scales, fanciness fails. And I have no doubt that you are going to help many more people than you've already helped. Anything you want to say in closing that helps our audience find you, use your resources, get excited?
Yeah. Thank you so much for this platform. You were my first experience, basically. Um, yeah, Deb. I suppose the Instagram is the biggest platform. So, but yeah, Instagram, Facebook, they all synced. I've kind of just recently simplified everything into a bio site, so it's just like a one site for all. Yeah, there's just free downloadables there. There's a few free things on there. My whole audiobook is actually for free on YouTube. People who take the time to find the page will see, oh my gosh, the whole book is free. Why did I buy it? Yeah, so it's all there. So yeah, it's MoveMedUK is the handles across the platforms. Yeah, very easy to find. And yeah, just perhaps subscribe to the YouTube channel in the meantime. Subscribe to the other channels if you haven't already. We have some plans for the future, and yeah, we're really excited about them.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see where you take this with the idea of scaling out practitioners and or whatever great thoughts come out of your sabbatical, adding in that why piece more and more. If people know why, then they have the power. Sometimes I remind my students that before surgery was commonly available, there were a lot more things that manual therapy or your own kind of first aid kit could handle. So helping people realize that there are more resources than the ones that are more risky or expensive is going to help our whole tribe thrive.
Yeah.
All right. And
Well,
I had you because I'll let you say that, but I wanted you here because this interview is my gift to our audience to celebrate the holidays because you have been an amazing guest who's so aligned with everything I agree with. So, but go ahead.
I was gonna say you don't actually know this yet, but you're going to be one of the first NRE practitioners. So
I
yeah,
love it. I was thinking that. I was thinking that just as you said it.
yeah, we want to just offer courses to empower practitioners of any kind to be like-minded.
Wow, we're gonna that's gonna be incredible. Thank you so much.
Drop the
So
mic or what?
I drop. Oh, I here mic drop moment. I did drop it. You dropped it. That's so exciting. So you wrote the book Why Movement is Medicine, and guys, I ordered it because I like to mark up books because I am truly a movement nerd. I get better with the tactile of writing things down and underlining them. But the audiobook is free. We'll be posting the links to all of his channels and his website. Dr. Q has been in the house today, and it couldn't be a better way to both end the year and begin the next year. Any
Amen.
last
Merry
words?
Christmas.
Okay,
Merry
that's our last word.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Yeah.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to Dr. Q, the whole team there, and the Architecture of Health, a whole community here. Again, like, subscribe, share. We're all building the better world together. All right. Say hi to your lovely wife and your baby.
Will do. Cheers.
Okay. Cheers. Bye.